It's time for some math. Hello, fellow book nerds. This is Gabby, and today we're doing a video I do every year, which is look at my reading stats. I know that if you're in this video, it means you are a real one, because this is always the least popular video, but I just love doing it, and I know that if you're here, you are my bestie. So thank you so much for watching it. I love talking about reading stats. I love talking about reading resolutions, things you want to accomplish, things I feel like I did accomplish, what I want to do differently in the year. I feel like this video is a really cool reflection on the year, just to see how I did, how many books I read, what genres, how I rated things, and things like that. I just love exploring that with you. And I also throughout the video will share like plans and things I want to do going forward, because I feel like this was not the best reading year. It was definitely number wise, but I don't know how I feel about it overall. So I feel like some changes are needed. I need to mix it up a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. But let's just jump into the stats. All right, I gotta make space for all the graphs. So official number of books I read this year was 125, which is crazy. I think the year prior I read maybe 124. So I knew it wasn't undoable. My goal was 123, so I actually exceeded the goal by 2 books, which was crazy. I don't feel like I really forced myself to read or anything like that. I feel like it is a big number. It's definitely getting bigger every year. But I'm not like there was no point in a year I was like, oh my god, I need to finish the books. Like, I was really solid. Like, I finished 2 books in New Year's Eve, and I didn't really need to finish them because I've already met my goal. But I don't like, I really don't like starting books one year and then finishing them. I even like it when I finish a book in a month and then I can start a month fresh, but that's just too hard to do and maneuver, and that would not work. I like starting the year fresh, so I was like, okay, let me just finish these. But I wasn't like cramming small books or anything like that, or just like 3-hour audiobooks just to read. So I did debate putting the goal as 124 this year, because I like, 2024, 124 books, 2023, 123. But I actually decided to make my goal 100 books. The reason being that I want to get back into epic fantasy, epic sci-fi, thick books, series. That's what I'm always all about. So I want to kind of do that more. I feel like I read a lot of different genres this year, which was awesome. But I do know that I want to pick up some really thick books. And I wouldn't want a really ambitious goal for whatever reason to put me off picking up bigger books if that's what I want to do, because that would just be such a shame and so counterproductive. So I thought, let's make 100, which is super doable and leaves me breathing room to, instead of hiring and reading the extra 24 books, I can just pick up something that's 600, 700, 800 pages and take my time with it if I want to and really engross myself. So future goal, 100 books for 2024. I'm really excited. I have made a pretty decent start already, so that's really good. But let's dive into what that reading looked like. I will say it was a really good year because my lowest number of books read was in March, which was 7, whereas if I look at year prior, my worst month was 4 books and my second worst was 5 books. So that was a real dip. And I was really surprised actually that the numbers were so high, because I actually started a new job in June, and usually that means stress and not reading. But this year I actually read way more in the summer. You can see there's like a really big peak, or like a very sustainable peak, because it was like from June to August, really high numbers. But I wasn't making videos, so I was reading, but I wasn't making videos. So I was still definitely really busy. Starting a new job is just very overwhelming. Looking for a new job, also really overwhelming. So that's why months leading up to that are slightly lower. Whereas I started the year with a bang of 14 books, and that was also my second biggest month was July, also 14 books. So it seems 14 books is kind of the peak I can hit in a month. Although I do think last year my best month was April with 15 books. So I know I can do it, but it's hard. 15 books a month is hard. So I wasn't like pushing myself or anything like that. I also think reading wrap-ups when it's 14, 15 books are so hard to do. They're so damn long. So I actually really enjoy when I read like up to 10 books, because then I can talk about them more comfortably. Summer being the best month makes sense, although it's kind of the inverse of last year. And now I've kind of mellowed out and kept it consistent at like 8, 9, 10 books. We'll see how this year goes. But this just goes to show sometimes you have better months, sometimes you have worse months, and it's all gonna work out in the end. Again, wasn't really stressed about any of this, so that felt really good. If you're interested in that type of thing, I have read 22,927 pages and listened to 680.5 hours of audiobooks. If you think to yourself, how does this girl sit down and read 125 books? She doesn't. She listens to audiobooks. And my commute is it's pretty long. For a 40 minutes commute, you can listen to 40 minutes of an audiobook. But you can see audiobooks really, really took up a lot this year. It's nearly 53% audiobook, and the remaining 26 was ebook and 20 physical, and then a small percentage of mixture. I think it was like literally one book. This changed quite a fair bit from last year, which was 32% audio, 37% ebook, 30% physical. So it felt a bit more like third. And maybe I prefer that a little bit. I do want to pick up more books with my eyeballs, and I do feel like that will be the case again if I pick up those thick fantasy sci-fi books. So I hopefully will pick those up physically, but I can also see those taking up a while for me to read because they're so big, and then me going for like 2-3 audiobooks in that time. I already this year nearly finished 2 audiobooks and not single physical or ebook. So I can see this trend continuing, but that means I'm spending money on audiobooks and it's worth it. So I'm not super upset, I'm not gonna lie. Then we can look at the genres. Fantasy, definitely the biggest percentage, especially because I read so many different types of fantasy. I've read loads of like fantasy that was also horror, fantasy that was also historical, fantasy that was also romance. But I mark them primarily as fantasy, so maybe they don't all feel like fantasy, or like for example, historical is a really low percentage of books I read is just for books, but the historical fantasy subgenre is definitely very more prominent. But yeah, 38.4% was fantasy, then horror was 13%, so that was the second highest percentage. Mystery was 6.4%, nonfiction was 2.4%, romance 4.8%, sci-fi 9.6%, thriller 9.6%, and dystopian 6.4%. I've actually just like looked at this, and fantasy was even a smaller percentage last year. And what's interesting is that I, in my like resolution, said I want there to be more variety of genres, which I feel like I have achieved. But now looking at this, I'm not so sure, because actually maybe it was even more diverse last year. I will say I think horror is a bigger percentage, but only by about 1%. So it did stay pretty consistent. I didn't pick up any anthologies. I didn't really pick up any classics. Is that true? Well, that's depressing. Need to pick up more. I feel okay about this. Again, I said I want to increase the sci-fi and the fantasy, or I want to read more like substantial fantasy. I feel like I've been reading lots of fantasy that's like a romance fantasy and just a bit more lighter, which is completely fine. Books I really enjoy. But I do think it's like I'm craving that high sci-fi, high fantasy, epic scope that I'm not quite getting right now. So I've already kind of pivoted to reading more of those, but I feel like a point in the year, it was more like horror, thriller, and that kind of thing, or at least that's how I felt. But statistics actually tell a bit of a different story. Oh, I also got confused. So I read 38% fantasy, not 48 books, 38%. Whereas last year I read 45 books, 36%. So I actually stayed really consistent. I'm actually shocked how consistent these percentages are. I was not expecting that. But let's quickly walk through this and dig a little bit deeper into kind of the format, audience, and that kind of thing. So what types of books was I reading beyond the genre? So audience, you can see that 68% was adult, whereas 29.6% was YA. I read 2 middle grades, which I don't even remember reading middle grades, if I'm being honest. This is something I'm really happy about because I feel like I really wanted to read adult and I've accomplished that. I will not pick up YA when it's really interesting to me. I'm really fascinated, but I don't so much bow down to just the cover looks good or there's hype about it. I now only pick things up if I'm really interested. And I'm investing that time into adult books, which is what I'm enjoying most, what makes it to my top books of lists. And I feel good about that. I've not missed YA too much. Although, if you can see, the percentage differences aren't that huge. It's only 2% more now that I've picked up adult in comparison to last year. So actually, I stayed really consistent, is what I'm learning, which I didn't realize. I thought it would be like a totally different story. Format, again, super consistent. 90% novels, 10% novellas, which was not a stat I think I had for last year. So I'm not sure what that compares to. I don't mind short stories, but I do really like long form books. So no notes. Type of publication, 76.8% were traditional, and then 19% was indie, 4% was self-published. I do think maybe I want to increase the amount of indie and self-published here. If you have a look at last year's, 81% was traditional. So it is a little bit better this year. I think also because I'm feeling romantasy at the moment, that might bump up the number a little bit. There's just a fun stat that was already in the sheet, so I kept tabs on it. Apparently, the biggest percentage of books I read were blue with 22.4%. And then it was black with 16.8, green was 12.8, and then it was orange. So yeah, I would not have thought blue, but actually you can see a fair bit of blue. I don't think this is really on my reading, and I think this is on what publishing does, but it's interesting to look at. Then in terms of whether the book was a series or a standalone, 55.2% of the books I've read were standalones, whereas 40% were part of a series, and then a smaller percentage, 4.8, was companion novels. So if you compare it to last year, I read 60% standalones and 30% part of a series. So this is quite interesting because I feel like 2 years ago, my resolution was I want to read more standalones. So last year, I really succeeded in that. I read loads of standalones, really enjoyed them. But now, this year, I was starting to get fatigue of standalones and I want to pick up a series. So I started picking up series more. So I think something I'm learning, because I've never really tracked my reading this much before starting BookTube, but now every year reflecting on it and tracking it, it's all about variety for me at least. I love something for a while, then I get a little bit sick of it. I try something new, I love that thing for a while, and then I go back to the other thing, and that's completely fine. These things will like fluctuate, and just because one time I said I want to read more standalones does not mean that for the rest of my life I can't. So that's something that's like super interesting for me just to reflect on and be like, oh, okay, that's funny, that's weird. So yeah, this year for now, my resolution is read more fantasies. Like, I really want those big sprawling epic sci-fi fantasy series at the moment. Maybe by the end of the year I'll get sick of them. I'll be reading standalones. Who knows? Maybe I'll just even itself out by the end of when everything is sanded down. But I'm having fun. Let's now talk about ratings because I have like a fair bit of reflections. I gave really good ratings this year, it seems. 36% of the books I read were 5 stars, which feels like a lot. Last year it was only 28%, so it's increased. Then we have 4.5 was 4.8%, whereas last year was like 8.9. And then 4 stars last year was 21%, whereas this year it was 14.4. And then 3.5 was my second most popular rating after 5 stars, which is 20%, which is kind of similar to last year because that was 19.5, and then 3 stars was 13%, which this year it was 12.8. So I feel like things haven't changed, but something I've noticed and I was reflecting on was the fact that I just keep giving things like very meh ratings. Like, I'm not happy with my ratings. I feel like so many different things are 3.5, and that could mean so many different things. And it started really affecting me trying to reflect and recommend books, talk about them in wrap-ups, because I do not for the life of me remember what I meant by that 3.5 I gave 5 months ago, and I can't really give any substantial feedback. I didn't write a review or whatever it was. And I'm just not happy. I feel like my ratings don't really mean anything. They're not consistent. I feel like my reviews are consistent and my reviews are honest, and my reviews you can go off of, but that means you have to watch a video, right? Whereas I feel like the star rating itself can be a little bit fickle. Like, I'll give it that, then I'll change my mind, and like I'll change it mid-review, and that's fine. And honestly, if that's your vibe, more power to you. I love that. That's my vibe so far. But I really want to become a little bit more systematic, just because I think this wouldn't even bother me at all if I wasn't like reviewing books on this channel. Because I review them here, I want to, be consistent. I want to know what I mean. I want to like really be honest and truthful. So for that reason, I decided that this year I'm going to try using CAWPILE. If you're not familiar with CAWPILE, I'm going to link down below the video of the creator of this system, but it is a rating system where you rate books based on characters, atmosphere, writing, plot, intrigue, logic, and entertainment. And you score using 10 points for each. And then there's calculations and math, and that gives you a rating on the scale of 1 to 5. I decided that I'm going to use, I think her name's B from Book Roast, but Book Roast tracking sheet this year. I'm yet to set it up, so I need to like modify a little bit to be exactly what I want. But I'm going to use her spreadsheet and use CAWPILE and hopefully get some more accurate ratings. And even if not, at least I would have scored each of these elements out of 10, so that when I then do reviews, I can talk to you, jog my memory, and talk to you about specific things I liked and didn't like about book, which I think is really useful. So yeah, I'm really excited about this step for me. I've always been really like mood guided book rater, even if I'm not a book mood reader in terms of like what I pick up. The rating's always been super arbitrary, what I feel in that exact moment, which is not the most scientific, which is fine. This is not that serious. It shouldn't be scientific, but the system's there. I really want to use it. If I don't like it, I'm just going to stop using it, after a while, but hopefully this will change the game for me. Then some more fun stats. I've mostly read books published in the year 2023. So new releases, which is great. I've read 37.6% books that came out this year. Then second biggest is 2022, then 2021, 2020, 2019. So it makes sense. I tend to pick up pretty new things. And then let's talk a little bit about the offer stats. So stats about the offers of the books. I have picked up 44% from offers I've read before, which feels like a big change, if I'm being honest, at least in how I've perceived my year. See, I keep thinking stuff's changed, but it's virtually the same. It was 43% last year, and it was 44% this year. Then new to me offers was 37, and it was 35 last year, and debuts were 22% and 18.4%. So I did do slightly less debuts this year, which was something actually I feel like I've felt when making my best of list, because there's a lot of people who I've already read from in the past and now just picking up their new books. And I still want to keep on top of new debuts. But looking at this, it's just like puts it into perspective that really not that much has changed. So maybe it's just the last couple months or something like that, where I felt like, I feel like I'm not reading new offers as much as I used to. Although I kind of am, it's just like a couple percent here or there that are different. In terms of offer pronouns, 79.2% of the offers I've read had she, her pronouns. Women still dominate my reading, that's for sure. Then 16% were he, him, and then 4.8% were they, them. And one of my goals was to read more diversely, that's both in gender but also ethnicity. So I did track the author's ethnicity. 48.8% of the authors I read were white, which is actually less than last year, which was 50.4%. And at some point, it was even less. So I'm still reading really diversely, which I'm really enjoying. I've read a lot from East Asian authors, Black authors, mixed authors, Jewish authors, um, indigenous, but I I didn't pick up anything from Pacific Islander authors, which I really want to, and I've done some research on like what kinds of books could be good. So yeah, I'm really happy because one of my goals was to read at least 50% of the books to be diverse. Okay, and then in terms of publishers, quite a variety, I would say. I don't track all the different imprints. I don't know that much about specific publishers, but I thought it'd be interesting to track the ones that I do pick up most and kind of see maybe any of them, like if it's lots of 5 stars, I could like start keeping an eye out. I think the biggest percentage was Tor and HarperCollins. I both read 18 books from, and then Penguin Random House 17, Simon and Schuster 16. So I don't really have anything shocking in here. It's just like really big popular publishers. One day I do need to do some analysis, see know who has the highest percentage of 5 stars rates like that, but I do not have that kind of energy at the moment. I also track the names of the authors that I have read from, but nothing too interesting from here. I've not read more than 2 books from the same author in the year, and that's like a fair number of them, but definitely minority. Oh, I lie. I lie. Suzanne Collins, I've read 4 books from because I've read the entire Hunger Games series this year. So fair play to Suzanne Collins. And then in terms of another bit of me reading diversely was tracking whether the books I've read had any LGBTQ plus content. So actually 42% of the books I read this year where had LGBTQ plus characters in like prominent roles, which is really cool. I really love seeing that, and it definitely feels good to have a wide plethora of offers and voices to kind of pull from and hear from, and yeah, I wouldn't change that. 2 stats that I have failed were read more nonfiction. So I've read 7, but my goal was 10. So I definitely can do better next year. I definitely want to, I think, try to read 10 again. And then arcs. I recently have been blessed by the arc gods because I finally managed to make an account on the UK version of that galley. I had some trouble. I signed up for the wrong one. It was a whole thing. But that means my percentage has gone down to like 56. It was like, I think 70 or something, or maybe 60 something at some point. And I have a lot of unread books. So my goal was to read 12 arcs, which would make it one a year, one a month. I've read 10, which is not bad. It's nearly the goal. I do think I want to keep this goal at 12. I feel like I might read more because there's a lot of books I'm going to pick up that are coming up, new releases. So it's just the backlist that keeps like looking at me and like really scaring me. So I'm gonna try to pick up books as they come out to hopefully eradicate those and like keep that percentage healthy and keep getting arcs. Also, I want to do reviews and stuff like that. But I really need to get to the backlist. I've been trying, especially the last couple months, because I've not had so much structured reading. So I've been mood reading. So I'm like, okay, let me pick up the arc then. But I need to get better at this. Okay, one stat that I forgot to mention was where my books were from, where I picked them up. And biggest percentage is Script, or now it's called like Everett's or something like that. Script doesn't surprise me because again, more than half of the books I read this year were audiobooks, and Script is where I get my audiobooks, so that makes sense. I mean, listen, I spend money on it, so it makes me happy. At least I'm getting my money's worth, that's for sure. I do feel like they started limiting the amount of books available to you quicker though, so I don't like that, but oh well. Then 25% were books I bought this year. So I bought them new either ebook or physical copy, and I read them this year as well, which is good that I read them. I don't know how many books I bought and didn't read, so that's like a whole other issue. And previously owned is only 3.2. That means only 4 books that I owned prior to this year I've read, which is kind of disturbing because I have some art ebooks and stuff that are definitely a backlist. And then NetGalley was 8.1%, so 10 books, so therefore the 10 arcs. And library was 12%, so 15 books from the library, which is great. And Kindle Limited was 3.2%, which is 4 books. So I got Kindle Limited this year. I think I'm not going to keep it, but I did renew it to get like the 3 months for the price of 1 month deal. I stopped reading romantasy, so this is really troublesome, but hopefully can get back on the horse. And in terms of library, I'm moving again. Yay. But I'm moving again. I'm gonna live right next to a library that seems massive, and I'm so excited, like beyond, like I'm so excited. So I'm definitely gonna pick up more library books. Hopefully this is like a brand new start. I think this library also closer to where I used to live, like the county, so hopefully they will have all those books, because the library I have now is like spotty, like it has Twilight but not New Moon, which is weird. Okay, I think those are all the stats, all the reflections. I think biggest takeaway is that nothing's changed. I have very consistent reading, even if it doesn't feel like that to me. Next year's resolution, definitely pick up more sci-fi, more fantasy, more series, and rate books with CAWPILE, which is pretty exciting. So please wish me the best on my journey. Let me know, how many books did you read? What was your favorites? What interesting stats do you have to share? Do you use any rating system? How do you rate your books? I would love to know all these things. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know some people really enjoy like looking at stats as much as I do. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, if you could comment, like, and subscribe, I really appreciate it. It really helps me out. But that's it from me, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!